of energy, because we don't just need electricity, we need cheaper electricity, and hydro is the cheapest in the world. Kindly.
So 2 questions. I couldn't quite hear the muffled voice of the first, but I think you were talking about what solutions can we invest in locally compared to international treaty structures.
I think the question was also about the degree to which the country institutionally and otherwise is future ready, is ready for the climate shocks that are going to keep coming.
Okay, what do you think? Pakistan's future ready? You're using plastic bottles, you're not future ready. You want to make decisions at home too, because any functional country or any high, I call it high value democracy, is only functional if its citizens are part of a chain of responses, okay? And so we've done a bad job of convincing you, that's another story, but it has to begin with our own absolute choices. Now, coming back to how ready we are, I think very few countries are ready. Risk reduction is a very high priority, and we sustained a huge exogenous shock to our economy from climate change. Every year, on average, it's 9% of GDP. 9% is very high. You would think that, like the World Bank's new country sustainability and development report, it is no longer a development report, it is a climate development report. It's called CCDR now. All countries are seen through the climate framework now, their resilience, their adaptability, and their building of that resilience. Now, very quickly, I was not able to communicate that in the main session, but adapting and building resilience to future shocks is one of the ways you prepare and minimize risk for your community, for your country, your province, right? And we have not been cultured to do that by the international system we respond to for climate. You know, the climate ministry is really, the federal one deals only very barely with international treaties, and last time there was a green program, tree growing. You have to do a lot more than that. You have to have a literal policy framework from Islamabad for literally everything. And national adaptation plan is still not been created. Takes about 2 to 3 years. I'm forcing it through. I'm on the second draft, Musharraf. It's, Pakistan's capacity to even create these documents is limited. But I'm determined it be homegrown and not written in another capital, which is how and why these documents never come out. It's not anybody else's priority, it's our own, to create a national adaptation plan with responses from all the provinces. The provinces are the heart of governance in our structure now, and even climate and environmental responses. I've actually had to change the name of the ministry to Climate Change and Environment, because most of the work we do is environment-based. And when I came in, it was called Mausamiyati Tabdili in Urdu. So there's very little even understanding. Mausam is weather. Maholiyat is climate. So the name had to be changed to just be, to respond to reality. So, in 2 words, no, we're not ready. We need to be far readier given the vulnerability and exposure to risk. Yes, the readiness is in some areas that has been created. And in fact, the UN Secretary General calls early warnings a fundamental human right now. And he's pushing for that change, but we don't have early warning. We only have it right now in a very low investment, old investment, creaky, unwieldy infrastructure of the Pakistan Met Department, which tells us, I'm in touch with them every day, especially in what is known as the fire season and the monsoon season and the heat season, but they have not been upgraded for a long time. Human capacity is also very hard to source here. Who do you appoint in these highly scientifically based, high-tech positions? Where's the human resource? There's a small pool in the private sector, but in government, I'm advocating that an entire service be set up for environment. Just like the Foreign Service, there should be a technical environment and climate, because climate is about energy transitions mostly. And you know,
That's a great segue into the second question.
yeah, and he's asking about water channels, actually. And water channels are not energy, but you're talking about hydel. So hydel is mostly available in the north, where there is the power from the mountainous terrain to drive water channels, right? You need water to be at a certain speed to generate electricity. And in the north, if you just even go as a tourist, you'll see, if you look around where the river, the great river Indus is running, you'll see even its tributaries, the small streams, not dammed, but with tiny hydel projects for communities everywhere. You'll see it in GB, you'll see it in Azad Kashmir, you'll see it in parts of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. So communities there through development partners, including especially USAID has been active in this, but all development partners, international, have been active. So they've set that up. But the era of big dams, of hydelizing water, I would say is over. And for us to even pretend that we can build big dams and they are the overnight solution, they're not. Why? Because yes, we do need reservoirs, but we have Tarbela and Mangla built from a time when there was great international capital available for the funding and capacity building that created such dams. The United States and World Bank were instrumental in the Tarbela creation. And it's a signature project of theirs, but they don't have that kind of capital to move to, say, you've heard of Dasu, and you've heard of the other one, not just Mohammed, the big one, Ghazi Barota, not Ghazi Barota, the big GB Dang. The Amir Bhasha has been on the cards for so long. Now, please understand, it takes consortium financing to make these just technical studies and then to make the dams move. To actually function, there is no international consortium funding available in today's world, especially post-pandemic and Ukraine war. No. Those supply lines of revenue and equity are going elsewhere. As for small dams, that's the way forward, and I think the country is building them. But what is sad for the north of the country, and climate change here is a big villain, is that when the glacial lake outburst floods happen, which happen around this time, magar climate change तो थोड़ा सा हो गया, अभी कोई इतने नहीं हुए हैं, अभी तक 10 हो चुके होते पिछले साल की तरह नहीं हुए. We're lucky, we're just lucky. And it's, what they do is, if you look at those videos, they destroy every hydel project in their way, like toothpicks, they just rip them out. And the same goes for large bridges. So when the water is rushing down the mountain from a glacial lake outburst flood, nothing can stand in its way. It's like, so I've often seen we are always able to save communities and now even their livestock, which is their livelihood, by early warning systems which are low cost. We have trained communities there, and that's one of the only federal program running in, we don't run programs in the provinces. They have to run them themselves, but we are running it in GB because that's still a federal territory to some way, and they wanted our help, so we're doing it with UNDP, huge program, and it trains communities. The communities are able to know when a lake will, but we've told them these are the lakes sensitive this year. They're able to move people, but not the hydel stations, not the infrastructure. It just gets ripped out. What do you do? Because you want a hydel station when the river is running strong. You can't take it to a placid lake when they say, oh, change where communities live. Well, where will you take your hydel station? And very quickly, and in terms of water channels, my God, Pakistan has the largest man-made irrigation system in the world. The world, please don't forget. It's another thing that the British created it for their political patronage of the canal colonies. But it's right there. And without that, I don't know where you'd be.